Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the regular council meeting to order, please. Council, I'm looking for approval of tonight's agenda with a motion to add item RA8, Police-Based Victim Services. There is a report in the materials. It just didn't get onto the title page of the agenda, but the report was actually distributed. It's page 147. And also, I've received note that our delegation D1 is unable to attend this evening. So with those changes, a motion to approve, please. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Ray. Any questions? Councillor Loggins?
Sorry, the correspondence was on page 148?
147?
147? Just trying to find that in here because I don't have a paper copy.
Okay. Is it...
I wasn't provided any paper copies of anything.
Okay, so would this have been attached to... is it on the electronic file? If I could just clarify where it is.
Yes, it's been added as RA8. You
So,
may have to refresh the agenda.
Thank you.
okay, is that good for everyone? Yes? All those in favor of the changes? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. Looking for adoption of Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from November 28th. Is there moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Ray. Are there any corrections? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And regular council meeting minutes from November 28th. Moved by Councillor Parkinson that minutes be adopted. Seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any corrections? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And we will receive the draft council committee minutes for information November 30th, the SPA committee meeting. Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Ray. Any questions from councillors? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, so that puts us into our public question and comment period. We have 2 minutes allocated per speaker. This is for any item on tonight's agenda with the exception of PI1, the 5-year financial plan amendment, because that has its own public input section. So it's for anything else on tonight's agenda. When you come forward, if you could please give us your name, your address, and the item that you wish to speak to. And there is a timer that counts down, and to allow everyone the time, it's 2 minutes per speaker, please. Okay, welcome.
My name is Margaret Critchlow. I live at 6683 Horn Road, and I'm speaking to the letter from the residents of Horn Road that's in your agenda packet at C5 under Letters for Action. It asks you to honor the current configuration, which allows on-street parking, except for a 40-foot zone about 40 feet long opposite 6670 Horn Road that's intended to meet that neighbor's needs. I scanned, and I trust the signature pages were submitted to you all today. The signatures for that letter totaled 40 as of the time that I sent them in this afternoon. Another 2 came in later, and I've given the original signature pages to staff for your information. This represents a huge number of the people who live on that end of the street. One resident is away traveling, and all of the other neighbors have signed that letter. What we're asking is that you support this current arrangement. And for me personally, I just want to add that I've had 2 hip replacements this year, one in April, and I found it in April very difficult because although we have a parking spot on the property, to unload and load in a walker and with all the paraphernalia that accompanies surgery without being able to park on the street was quite difficult. And I'm personally really grateful that now we have an area on the street that we can use for people like myself who are recovering from surgeries or have heavy loads. We've got a lot of seniors there. and it's, I believe, working very well. You'll see the street is not heavily congested as a result of it. I'll just end it there. I know there are other people who want to speak to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Critchlow.
Good evening. My name is Jane Birkbeck. I live in Building 1 in Harborside Co-Housing. I had a total knee replacement in November. I'm anticipating another in February. Building 1 is as far away from the common house as it is possible to be, right down by the Rotary Wharf. And since parking is allowed on Horn Road, I'm able to drive up from my assigned parking place to Horn Road and park in front of the common house. And I have therefore been able to attend all of the events. And thank you for your time, and I hope you'll consider our varying needs. Thank you.
Mayor and councillors, my name is Bob Stamp. I live at 6679 Horn Road. I'm going to be 80 years old in February. My wife and I are beginning to experience mobility issues. What we really appreciate about the District of Sooke is the opportunity, the availability to park on residential streets when we attend functions. For functions at the Sooke Community Hall, if available parking spaces off-street are filled, we're able to park on Eustis. If we go to Knox Presbyterian Church and the parking lot is full, we're able to park on Church Road. Now, if the neighbors on Eustis and Church welcome our parking in front of their houses, I welcome visitors parking on Horn Road in front of where I live if all available on-site parking spots are taken. I think it's a quid pro quo, a bit of reciprocity here, and I appreciate the time. This, of course, is agenda item C5. Thank you.
My name is Peter Kennedy. I reside at 818 East Street, 6th Street in North Vancouver, and I'm here to address agenda item C5, parking on Horn Road. I'm the son of Marion Kennedy, who resides at 6670 Horn Road. Our family has owned this property for over 36 years. Although I do not reside in Sooke, I have in fact the power of attorney, and I'm here speaking on behalf of my mother, who is 94 years old and could not attend this meeting. I would like to speak to the ongoing issue regarding the parking at the east end of Horn Road, specifically the reinstatement of the permanent no parking signs that were installed in January of this year. We initially brought this issue to the district's attention in December of last year during the construction of the Sooke co-housing, during which my mother endured an ongoing issue regarding impeded access to her property because of the continual parking of vehicles on the south side of Horn Road. After we presented the documents supporting our case to the district CAO in January, we were told that it was not necessary to go to council because the district staff had used their delegated authority to put up the signs to make them permanent. In September and November, these signs were taken down and moved twice by the district engineer without our knowledge. At their current positions, the signs do not address the issue of impeding access to our property on Horn Road when vehicles are parked on the south side. At no time during this process was our family consulted or told that the signs would be removed. As none of the conditions have changed, Sooke bylaws, street narrowness, and an independent traffic assessment since January, we would like the district to reinstall and reposition the signs at the earliest possible time. This issue has put continual stress on my mother and her health. The lack of respect and courtesy shown by the district towards my mother and our family has left me very disappointed. We hope that the mayor and council will rectify the situation. Thank you.
My name is Eline Berlin, and I too live at 818 East 6th Street in North Vancouver. Peter Kennedy is my husband, and Marion Kennedy is my mother-in-law for over 30 years. I am too speaking to agenda item C5, the Horn Parking Road. I would like to refer to the document that was submitted to Council by residents of Horn Road East on December 8th, which contains some misleading information. Number one, in all of our correspondence with the districts, never once did we request that there be prohibited parking on the entire street. Number two, the residents have not worked with Mrs. Kennedy about the current configuration, as they have never talked to her about it. Number three, the existing arrangement was not achieved in negotiations with the District of Sauk staff and everyone in the neighborhood, as no one has ever contacted Mrs. Kennedy from the District of Sauk about this. The pavement opposite 6670 Horn Road is not 12 feet wider than it was before the construction. The pavement width is still less than 6 meters, which is about as wide as it was before the construction. Now, the issue of the hedge is due to be trimmed, as it has been every single year since the Kennedys have lived there, which is over 36 years. However, trimming the hedge, which will be done, does not change the narrowness of the road, nor will it change the fact that there's a soft shoulder and a culvert on the north side. Given the current configuration of the signs, if vehicles are parked at the edge of both signs in the allowed parking area, access to Marion Kennedy's property is impeded. It must be taken into consideration that vehicles of all sizes may need access to 6670 Horn Road, such as a landscaper with truck and trailer. Her gardener has that. We would like the District of Sauk to stand by their decision of January 2016, when they used their delegated authority to install the 3 permanent no parking signs along the frontage of 6669 Horn Road, and return them to their original position as soon as possible. Thank you.
Ian Thomas, 6675 Horn Road, and I'm addressing the same issue, C5. Honorable Mayor and Councillors, I come before you today to petition for support of the compromise reached between the district staff and the 97% of households, 36 of the 37 households on the east end of Horn Road. The east end of Horn Road is a vibrant neighborhood, a place where you know your neighbors and we chat on the street. My wife and I moved here in part to be part of a caring community, and we really appreciate the neighborhood and knowing our neighbors very well. The compromise is a culmination of almost a year of effort. Since January, people have been trying to talk about this and figure it out. And we believe that it's important that after putting this much effort in, that the council supports this compromise so that people like me can park on Horn Road in front of Harborside when necessary and when it's convenient. Thank you.
My name is Ellen Candlish. I live at 6683 Horn Road. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of continuing the parking on Horn Road. Parking near our home on Horn Road is desirable for our family, as we have a family member who has health care needs and requires community support workers to come to our home every day. We have equipment and supplies that need to be dropped off, and all of these people need to be able to park at a reasonable distance. When we first moved here, there was no road available because it was getting set up for paving, and we had to have all of our people park up near the Anglican Church, and we had to have equipment and supplies dropped at Murray Road and Sauk at the dental office because there is no way of getting there. So we are very appreciative of being able to have the parking near our home as it is now. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anne Clement. I live at 6683 Horn Road, and I'm speaking in favor of parking on Horn Road. I would like to make a respectful request, please. It is that you support the concerted effort of Horn Road residents, as we have listened carefully to our neighbors' needs and have problem solved to accommodate them. There is plenty of room on Horn Road for everyone, both to have designated parking spaces as well as clear stretches that allow for the safe use of driveways. Please support our patient and respectful communication and reasonable request. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Ralph Hull. I'm a retired certified sea captain residing at 102 6669 Horn Road. I'm passing out what I'm going to say to you so you can read along or put it in your notes for later on. For 29 years, I've been the unofficial steward of East Horn Road because I ran a few businesses down there at that address. Now, in times of snow, I used my equipment to clear 5 driveways and all of East Horn Road from Rumans to the East End. We put on weddings and social events, so I was always concerned about parking on Horn Road. When we had events, I posted big signs and had patrols to ensure nobody parked on the north side, allowing for parking on the south side only, leaving access for emergency vehicles. The current complaints about emergency vehicle access are unfounded, because there's easy access to any address on East Horn Road. There's no reason to prohibit parking on the south side of Horn Road, opposite the driveway at 6670. I conferred with the local ambulance service as to their driving skills and access, and they confirmed that there's no concern about access to 6670, even with cars parked on the south side. But it would be beneficial to trim that hedge. In the Kennedy letter of January 24, 2016, they failed to admit that we gave up 4 meters of property in rezoning, thereby widening Horn Road by 2 meters, even with the addition of the 2-meter sidewalk. So the width is 7.6 meters, that's 25 feet. The major solution to install the long-awaited culvert in the ditch on the north side of Horn Road. The west end of East Horn Road would have to be regraded to eliminate the south side swale. It would then equal Murray Road. Problem solved. That same letter gives hint to these complaints. There seems to be resentment that the senior co-housing was built because the comments and photos refer to the period of construction.
Captain Hull? Sorry, we're out of time. It's 2 minutes per speaker, but thank you for providing this in writing.
Can I finish? It's not much.
No. Sorry, it's 2 minutes per speaker.
All right.
But thank you. I see that there's some extra highlights, and thank you for putting it in writing. Are there any other speakers for other matters on tonight's agenda as well? It was for all items of the agenda, not just Horn Road, but I'll just call if there's anyone remaining. Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move into the business of our council. We'll start off with PI 1, which is bylaw number 658, 5-year financial plan amendment bylaw 2016. This has first came to council 4 weeks ago, and then it returned 2 weeks ago, where we pulled it just requesting a bit more time to process the information. So it's here before you again tonight. When it first came forward to council, I did not allow staff the opportunity to introduce and provide a report to it, so I'd like to do that now. And then we'll follow off with any questions from council, and then I have a statement, and then we can get into the public input portion. So I'd like to turn this over to our Director of Finance, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report is on page 19 of the package. And it's the same report that came forward on the 14th of November, so nothing new there. What I just would like to add, or actually this did get added into the report, sorry, is that these amendments aren't unusual. They're pretty standard in a lot of municipalities. So if you look, and I just found a few online very quickly, City of New Westminster, City of Richmond, District of West Vancouver, Cowichan Valley Regional District, City of Grand Forks, City of Penticton, District of North Vancouver, Town of Golden, Town of Smithers, and then there's a lot others. So it's standard, and the Community Charter 165.2 allows for amendments at any time. Generally, you do it at once, otherwise you'd be coming forward to amend the bylaw many times throughout the year. So most municipalities leave it till once a year, closer to the end of the year. So the actual adjustments are on pages 49 to 52, and it's all the details are in there. It's been public since the 14th of November. I haven't fielded any calls from the public directly. So, and actually, if there's any more questions on the legal part, how the community charter ties into all this, I'll actually pass this off to Gabriel, right? And otherwise, if you don't have any questions, I'll do that right now.
Okay, so I'll just turn to our corporate officer if you wanted to add to Mr. Blackhall's comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to make it clear for Council that under the Community Charter, as Mr. Blackhall already mentioned, it's normal in the normal course of business through the year for any municipality in Canada to make adjustments and to have expenditures outside the budget. One thing that's important to point out is that any councillor who votes for any expenditure outside of the budget, who then in turn does not vote for a bylaw amendment at the end of the year reconciling those expenses, is in contravention of the Community Charter and is liable to up to and including a disqualification from office, both immediately and in 4 years forward, which would include the next election. So as you've all voted for motions which have caused expenditures outside the budget, you're all required to vote for this, should you not wish to risk disqualification from office.
Okay, thank you, staff. Are there questions from members of council on the report? Comments? No? Okay. So on that note, when this report was introduced, council did request that a special public input meeting be added to address this item specifically on the agenda. And as such, there's always a statement that goes with that. So this public input meeting is being held to allow the public an opportunity to make submissions to council on this particular item on the agenda. Staff has presented the report, and then anyone who has an interest in the item can have this opportunity to make a submission to council. Before speaking, please state your name and address for the record, and kindly note that this hearing forms part of the regular meeting and as such is being video recorded. Videos and their contents, including any personal information disclosed during this public input session, will be posted on the district's website. So this session is specifically for bylaw number 658 only. So I'd like to welcome any member of the public forward that has any input on this matter.
Sorry. My name is Britt Santowski, and I live at 2206 Church Road. These budget changes concern me. The Corporate Services Contingency Fund has increased from $2,500 to $129,000. That's an over 5,000% increase. The reason given were 3 previously approved expenditures, 1 being the security contract, 2 being the interim fire chief, and 3 being employment services. On June 27th, Council discussed where the security funds would come from. Ultimately, the Director of Finance said that a new line item would have to be added. The Mayor wanted this new expenditure to be added to parks. In the revised financial plan, a new item for 13,635 does appear in parks under operating costs. So my question on this one is, why are we paying twice? Once as a line item and one through the Corporate Services Contingency Fund increase. The Community Charter does allow that revisions can be made in a timely manner. Given that the interim fire chief's employment was known since the end of July with the start date of early August, my layman interpretation of timely does not mean 4 months later. Timely in my books would be at the first council meeting back in September. You knew of this expense then. And also, shouldn't this expenditure come from the fire department? Lastly, the references to employment services. If this is a reference to the January contract clearly entitled Employment Agreement, this expenditure was never approved by Council, at least not by my recollection. And in spite of the promises of savings through staff adjustments from earlier this year, the staff number at Corporate Services has increased over this year. Granted, only the first page is the actual bylaw and the subsequent pages are a roadmap of how to get there. But if one can't even follow the roadmap that one helped map out, and a 5,000% increase is required for one single contingency fund, I'm very worried about the district's financial outlook. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Santowski. Your questions are noted for the record.
Is there a time limit on this?
It's 2 minutes.
2 minutes? Yes. Huh. I think I was thrown by the comments made earlier about council daring not to not vote. I find that a strange comment. But I'm going to go back to the staff report that introduces this bylaw. And it says that expenditures have since been approved that were not included in the original bylaw. Could someone tell me, please, who approved those expenditures?
I would just, Ms. Hall, just to use your time effect, just list it all off. The questions are noted, and then council can take all
that's not good enough because you
it's,
folks are going to vote tonight. And
it's public input.
It's public
Please
input,
continue.
but council's been misled on this, and you want to go that way, fine. But this staff report is not accurate. Your bylaw that you're bringing forward tonight is not legal. You can't bring in a bylaw to amend your 5-year plan if you've already spent the money. The money's been expended. Those were illegal expenditures, and if you want to vote for it.
Ms. Hall, I'm going to just ask you to pause. I'm allowing our staff to leave. Comments that have been made have been impacting my ability to have a safe working environment. And so some of the comments that have been made where there's been allegations of staff doing something criminal or untoward.
Oh, come on. I mean, that's got nothing to do with this. But I'm trying to tell you that you can't, it's the old adage.
I just need, I need you to pause because I need a counselor to take minutes in the absence of having staff present. So until staff come back, can I please task Councillor Ray to take minutes? Thank you. Okay, Councillor Ray, I would like to allow any other member of the public who would like to speak to this matter to please come forward. Just require your name and address for the record, please. Okay, seeing none, if you could please get our staff back in the room. Okay, thank you. So there were no other speakers following from staff's departure, and I did need to put a resolution forward for ask a councillor to take minutes, but in that time, Ms. Hall concluded her comments. So I'm going to turn this back to council. You have received some queries from members of the public. It's up to you how you would like to proceed in terms of getting them answered. There is some on asking for clarity on some items that were in the report, and there was also a concern that the report does not meet proper financial reporting mechanisms. For the public that remains here, the district audits itself every year by an outside independent auditor that reviews the financial statements and then provides advice to our staff and to myself or to the acting mayor, whoever may be present at that time. There are always matters that the district can improve upon in terms of reporting out. Those recommendations were heard clearly by our finance director, who then took it upon himself to provide this report to council. This report has not come forward to council for a number of years. It's my understanding now that our finance director, Dave Devanna, was the last director of finance to actually put this report forward, and amendments were made throughout the year as budgetary items occurred. Our staff here are trying to provide more information forward to council so that we understand the what our decisions are. We were advised that any amendments that occurred in the past year the budget must be amended by the end of the year. So that's why this item is important, that it's on the agenda for this evening. Council does have the ability to debate issues as they come forward throughout the year, but we still need to make the amendment. And as stated by our finance director earlier, this is not unique to Sooke. There are a number of municipalities that do this. I don't know why Sooke did not do it in the past, but that's neither here or there. The point is that we are doing it now, and going forward, as all of us on council were wondering what this report was all about when it was first introduced, we're looking at finding ways to improve upon that as the matters occur. So perhaps we'll be discussing clarity on resolutions, getting more detail in them so we know if it's a contingency item, if it's budgeted, or if an amendment would be required. Staff, too, have also heard the messaging and will be adding more information to the reports so that it's more clear. And then we can look at a process. Does council want to do this twice a year, or do you want to just do it once a year? And then also to get quarterly updates on any variances within the budget, even on a quarterly item. So there's different options that are being heard. We understand. Staff certainly heard and understood the concerns that were put forward by council and also by members of the public. But to say that the report is illegal or that some sort of untoward activity has occurred in the district, I find troubling to hear. And therefore, I to be accused previously of being a criminal myself and any others seated at both this table and the other is also of a concern to myself and to members of council, and as well to the listening public. We all take our roles extremely serious. This is a very important matters, and all of us serve on a number of different boards and commissions that have a financial piece attached to them and a reporting mechanism. The CRD just last week at a special meeting did a preliminary budget for 2017 so that they can proceed with doing projects starting in January as opposed to waiting until May when the budget's actually passed and not being able to do anything in the front half of the year. It was a draft preliminary budget with significant materials, but that did actually occur, and that's another way that municipalities operate. So I thank staff for trying to provide a lot of information here, and we know that there's ways to improve upon, and I think that message has been heard by council, and we're going to be looking at doing that in the new year. So on that note, Councillor Ray.
Yes, and thank you, Your Worship, and through Your Worship to the Director of Finance and the staff of the District of Sooke. I have absolutely full confidence in your ability as our Director of Finance and fully believe and trust with your qualifications that you do actually know the principles and the requirements of budgeting for the people of this community. And with that, I'm going to move the recommendation that Council adopt bylaw number 658, five-year financial plan amendment.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Loggins, and speaking to adoption, Councillor Loggins.
Thank you. I agree with what the mayor and Councillor Reyes said. I'll be voting in favor of this, but I don't feel like I'm being strong-armed by anyone or anything. We did discuss it 2 meetings ago, and it all made sense to me. I had some questions, and they were answered by our staff. One thing I did want to bring forward were the questions that Ms. Santowski had today, and if we could perhaps get some clarity on those, just so that the public is aware of the answers to those questions. I tried to take notes. Sorry, Ms. Santowski, I was a bit slow on that, but through you, Your Worship, the first one was in relation to the parks versus contingency for the CAO and the funding for our security. Yeah.
Yes, through the chair to the member. As it's outlined on one of the adjustments pages there, what the increase to the contingency was used because there was no direction provided at the time as to where to put those items. The contingency budget is just that. It's a contingency and it's a budget, so it's an estimate. As things come up during the year, that's where they go unless they're approved, unless someone says, let's have a line item X and put it X, then we'll put it there. So next year, as I think was mentioned, that we're going to be looking at tightening the resolutions so that there's a bit more direction there, and also a couple of policies that might relate to this too. So it was the fire chief contract, interim fire chief, sorry, and the security agreement that we had for security services, sorry, and then another related contract for operations. So.
Thank you. Did I miss one? I feel like I missed one.
Oh, sorry. Again, through the chair. Parks is explained, again, in the document on the adjustments page. And that, again, is to reflect that we're bringing in the parks in-house. So that was all in front of council earlier. 2 staff members, 2 full-time and 2 auxiliaries, and related equipment.
Does that answer your questions, Councillor Loggins?
It does for me, yes, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, through the chair to the Director of Finance, I appreciate the amount of time that we've taken and the amount of information that we've been given on the amendment process and the charter, because it was kind of foreign territory. It seems like we're voting on something that we didn't really understand, and now I've kind of grasped it. And I hope the public understands that this is an amendment to the financial plan. It's not the financial plan. So we have to. What I have to appreciate is that we're doing it in real time. We're looking at things in the actual time frame that we're spending it, as opposed to waiting to next year. We pour over these financial reports and we grind away at all the things that we're trying to save money on, and we have to be cognizant that the taxpayers need to have clarity on this as well. So I know it seems like it's been a long process, but I do appreciate the staff and the work that they've put into this, because at the end of the day, it's the taxpayer that pays these bills. So thank you.
Anything else from members of council? I'll call the question then on adoption, please. All those in favor? It's opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Bylaws, B1, bylaw number 641, zoning amendment bylaw 2016, 2110 and 2120, Church Road. And I believe we start off with a staff report. Welcome, Ms. Lashane.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. The application, here we go. This application is for an amendment to an existing zone called the CD11 Knox Center Zone. Area A of the property consists of approximately 1.3 acres of land. The application is to add an apartment building to Area A of this zone, which is highlighted on the subject property map. The proposed change to Area A will allow a 40-unit affordable housing development to be constructed. It's intended that the building will be run by the Knox Vision Society and BC Housing. The society has stated in their application that they're focused on providing affordable rental units to individuals and families in Sooke. When staff are considering applications for rezoning, we look at the merits of the site and for consistency with the official community plan and other planning documents. In this instance, the official community plan designates the property as town center, shown here in the orange. The town center designation supports medium to high density residential development, along with a mix of commercial and institutional uses. Affordable housing is also ideal in this location because services can be provided and accessed very efficiently. These subject properties have been identified during previous rezoning applications as the north anchor of the town center. This proposal will bring more people into the town center and will provide opportunities for people to live and work within walking distance to core services, schools, and shopping. The site also provides excellent access for transit. This final slide is a concept of how a potential new building could be configured on the site. The covenant registered to the title requires that the two properties be consolidated at the time of development permit, which is also when council will consider the form and character of any future building on the site. The architect involved with the project has confirmed that the site can accommodate this proposal with the addition of apartment building to Area A of the CD11 zone. Staff has reviewed the proposed text amendment and supports the application. And I believe the architect is here tonight if you have any specific questions about the proposal.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lashane. And then as I see this, it is specifically a text amendment, and you're looking for first and second reading, and then a public hearing to that effect will follow. Okay. Questions from councillors? Councillor Parkinson and Pearson?
Thank you for your presentation. I like that the apartment building is for both individuals and for families, and that it is providing affordable housing. I'm hoping that we will have sufficient parking for this project. So I just wanted to make that in there. Thank you.
Councillor Pearson?
Okay, this is an excellent project, and I guess I'm a little confused at why it's come back for an amendment to a CD zone when I recall that we talked about having apartments in there to start with. So it's kind of confusing to me that, and I hope that this isn't delaying the process for these people. That's kind of what I was hoping, is that we've already talked about this and approved this somewhere back in history, and I think I remember apartments being part of this proposal. So I'm kind of confused at that. So, and everyone knows my opposition to CD zones, so I won't speak about that. The other thing that I was kind of curious about on page 4 was a transit stop being built on Church Road. Does that sound right to me?
Yeah.
Church Road's not on a transit road, I don't think. Is it like this little minibus one?
Councillor Pearson, yes. One of the community buses goes through, and when the minibus isn't available, it's a regular lowrider. So it's, I can't remember which route it is, but it's the Church Road loop. 63 or...
So it comes down Wadham's Way and then comes down Church Road?
No, I don't believe it goes, I don't remember it entirely, because we have two community buses that service the Sooke. This one, I believe, goes Church and maybe Otter Point or something. The other one comes through Sun River and does East Sooke. Like there's two do different loops. Okay. But that's why the stops there is for that.
So through the chair to miss decision, then where on the map was that? Do you have something you could show me where that transit stop would be?
Through the chair, the design for the transit stop hasn't been completed.
Okay.
Once the project comes to fruition,
it has been agreed to in a covenant that a transit stop would be located somewhere along that frontage.
Okay, so, and I know this doesn't look a lot different than the original proposal that we saw a few years ago. So I thought they were coming closer out to Church Road with the building, and I'm kind of confused at where that transit stop would actually fit in. So, like, is it possible? Like, I mean, I'm just thinking, transit stop to me is a big thing that gets off the road. Is that a huge encumbrance on this?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Pearson, through the original, when the original rezoning went through, there was a reference from BC Transit through our referral service that had a design, and I can't remember the exact location, but I think it was closer or just immediately north of where the church is right now, in that vicinity there. We haven't had a design for it, but we will be working with the architect and the engineer as we go through the process.
Okay. Oh, I mean, that seems okay. Page 87. Takes me a long time to get 87 on this thing. Okay. So can I go back to my original question then, through the chair to this decision? I turned it off. I thought I was turning it on. So the text amendment, was it really required for apartments in a CD zone?
So under Area A, there's two principal uses. Assisted living facility is one, and community care facility is another. And those are the only two uses permitted under that part of the zone.
So I guess my question is that something that we missed last time we were here? Because when we talked about this at council, and I think we talked about it at the land use committee first, then we went back to council and we approved this. I had the vision, or I had the understanding that this had apartments in it. Like, and like assisted living is an apartment to me. So I want to make sure that the Knox, this is a great project, and I want it to be understood is that we're supporting this. I just hope that we're not delaying this process. That's kind of what I'm getting the sense of. And I know there's a public hearing piece of it, but public hearing seems to be dragging this out just to change the wording on what should have already been in there. Sorry.
Just to respond to that through the chair, the original staff reports that I reviewed from the previous rezonings had a very specific agenda, and that was for community care facility, which is actually licensed under the Assisted Living Community Care Facility Act, or there's a assisted living option.
I guess going back through the chair to you is that my question is, isn't assisted living, isn't it care, isn't that an apartment? I guess that's what I understood that. So, and some of those were going to be rental and affordable forms. I'm going back in my brain. So,
by definition, neither of the two uses permitted in Area A accommodate apartments.
But what about our Area B? Sorry.
Area B does allow for cooperative housing, so that's a different form of housing.
Okay. Okay.
Councillor Ray, then Loggins.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Actually, I'd like to council give first and second reading to bylaw number 641 zoning.
Okay, so that's been moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Okay, so speaking to the motion, Councillor Ray.
I don't.
No?
I'm
okay.
just. I have no problem. I think I agree with Councillor Pearson. I think it's a great idea, and I'd just like to see it move forward.
Okay, Councillor Loggins, do you have something to add to the motion?
Just wanted to say it's an excellent idea, and I support the motion.
Okay. So I'll call the question then on first reading. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And calling, would someone like to move second reading? Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. And also a motion to schedule a public hearing for bylaw 641. Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Loggins. Question from Councillor Pearson.
How soon can we schedule that?
There is, our next council meeting would be the second week in January. Would the public hearing be able to be held at that time? Because the public notice is 2 consecutive weeks. Is that correct?
Your Worship, we can certainly get the notices out in that time.
Okay, so we'll look forward to the public hearing then, second council meeting in January.
We may even be able to have it on the 9th of January.
Oh, okay, the
Yeah.
first week in January. So we would call a special meeting.
No, the first regular scheduled meeting of council as per your...
Okay, sorry,
is
I
on
was
the 9th.
thinking the second Monday was, that's what I meant, is the second Monday would be our first regular council meeting, or the next available council meeting. Next meeting. Okay.
The next
we're
meeting's
clear on
January
when
9th.
that is.
January 9th.
Okay, thank you for bringing this forward, and I would like to congratulate the group. You've had a patient long time, but I know that there was a funding announcement that was made recently, so we wish you very much success in the project and look forward to the public hearing and subsequently moving on with adoption so you can get on and see your project built. So thank you very much for your patience as we work through this. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item B2 is bylaw number 653, Future Policing Costs Reserve 2016. There's a report to council in the materials. Any questions or anything to add from our finance director?
I'll move that council rescind the third reading of bylaw number 653.
So question to our corporate officer, does this all need to be moved and broken out, or can it be moved as a block?
Yes, this should be done individually.
Okay, so the first one is third reading has been rescinded. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Number 2, that's sections 2, 4C, and 5 of the bylaw 653, Future Policing Cost Reserve, be amended as outlined in the November 14, 2016 staff report entitled Future Policing Cost Reserved.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And then lastly, that bylaw 653, Future Policing Cost Reserve, be read a third time as amended. Moved by Councillor Loggins and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Last bylaw B3 we received was bylaw 659, Firearms and Bow Use Bylaw 2016. We had a draft introduced to us at the last meeting, and I believe there was questions about pellet guns and a description or a definition. Ms. Rear, are you speaking to this? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Chair, the Chair. So there was a couple of questions that was brought from the public last time. So I just wanted to outline a little bit more information so that you understand why we are going forward with this. So what happened with the research is we actually did look at the provincial and federal legislation. I know that was a question that Councillor Casper had asked last time. So we did include such acts as the Wildlife Act, Criminal Code, Firearms Act, Migratory Birds Convention Act, and Farm Practices Act in order to allow folks that are have active farmland to be able to scare birds off or other wildlife that were causing issues with their crops. So we did look at a huge amount of municipalities, both here on the island and in the Lower Mainland, to consider best practices, and we looked at specifically those that contained farmland or agricultural land in their municipality boundaries so that we could sort of look at what their practices were in regards to firearms and bow use. And bow use was something that was mentioned earlier in the year, actually, through residents that had complaints. So we actually took the definitions, since there was no definitions in our current bylaw, and we've added definitions into this one to make it clear to the public as to what a bow entails and what a crossbow entails and what a firearm entails. These are pretty much consistent with what is included in the Wildlife Act, and that's basically our main regulation for use of firearms within the province. The pellet gun question that was brought up, there is actually It's very convoluted, actually, with air guns, but according to the RCMP and the Criminal Code and the Firearms Act, there are actually two types of air guns, and they are air or compressed guns or spring guns. They can be further divided into 4 different types, and the first type is an air gun that has a high muzzle velocity and a high muzzle energy. And air guns need to meet both these standards to be classified as firearms for the purposes of the Firearms Act. The next classification of air gun is a gun with a maximum velocity of 152.4 meters or 500 feet per second, and a maximum muzzle energy of 5.7 joules. So we've added that stipulation into the bylaw since the last report came to you. And these guns are, acquisition of these air guns are regulated more by provincial and municipal laws than by federal law. That's why we've included it into our bylaw. And then there is replica firearms, which are prohibited devices, and air guns that are not firearms nor replicas. So it's a little bit confusing, but that's why we've added in the stipulation around number 2 into our current bylaw. There's also a question about the regulation of the 150 meters. So that's standard across the province, so that's why that's sort of added into our bylaw to add clarification for the public. There is rumor that that might actually increase to 500 meters. So this is what it currently looks like with a 150 meter buffer in the District of Sauk. But the use of firearms and bow is going to be prohibited across the municipality as it was currently with the bylaw, except for the exceptions that are noted. And then there was a question about the power line and use of bow and firearms around the power line. The District of Sauk's boundary runs along the BC Hydro power line, and hunting is permitted 800 meters past that power line, which is basically outside our jurisdiction on the side of the Otter Point area. And then there are a few areas, if you look back at the map again, that are up near the Sun River area at the end of Phillips Road. And of course, the regulations of the 150 meter buffer around dwellings, schools, etc., would of course be in effect. So those are the exceptions to those things. So that would be just what I've put right in the bylaw regarding the low velocity pellet guns or air guns, and you can use on your own land for ALR purposes or farm purposes. So I think it's pretty clear, but if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Thank you very much for the report, Councillor Pearson.
And thank you, through the chair, to you, Ms. Ruhr. So where did this come from? I guess we started with a letter from Mike Hicks about the geese, and then it was decided that we can't shoot the geese in our district, and so now we've come up with another bylaw?
I guess it's because our current bylaw states that it's prohibited all across the municipal board. So basically, the question that Hicks brought forward to the council was to have some kind of clarification as to what kind of use would be allowed. And under provincial regulations, they do allow use in farmland in order to protect crops. So that's why we're rewriting the bylaw so that it is clear to the public.
Councillor Pearson, if I could speak to that through the chair. We've had a number of complaints from the community with some people having deer run through their backyards with a bow, with an arrow through their head near children. So this was a concern by a number of individuals in the community. So we're responding to their complaints and bringing this forward for council consideration.
And I've heard some of those same complaints. I guess my question is that if we're trying to control geese as a pest, and then we don't allow any way to control them, seems like it's counterintuitive to me. So, municipalities across the board are struggling with, pest control or things. You only have to read the paper about the deer in Oak Bay to try and see how complicated this is becoming. Okay, I have no more questions.
If I may, through the chair, to answer that question. So, like I had mentioned, the bylaw currently prohibits use of firearms in the district. And so this allows those that are in farmland to be able to do what you say about geese, shooting them if they are an issue. Of course, that doesn't negate the provincial and federal legislation, so they would have to abide by those as well.
I guess it's, sorry, through the chair to you, I guess it's becoming confusing to me because we have ALR stretching down Maple Avenue between Grant Road and West Coast Road, things like that. So we've got a lot of ALR land. Is that agricultural land? And I know it's not currently being farmed. Is it, so if you're on ALR land, is that now subject property, subject to the other rules? So you're allowed to discharge a shotgun according to this?
You can, as long as you are not within a 150-meter buffer of a dwelling or farmland or where there is operations of workers. So that's where the stipulation kind of lies.
My concerns are, again, is we put bylaws in place that are more complicated than the issue than what we're trying to solve, right? I guess that's, this is and it's a very complicated bylaw, and it's got, and we're an urban community, or we were a rural-rooted community turning into an urban community. So there's some historical things in there that people have taken upon themselves. So anyways, it's that struggle. So as we become urbanized, I guess. Thanks.
Councillor Parkinson, then, right?
So down within Spit, there's been a number of problems there with bows for the last couple of years, and down Deerleap area, there's the tree farm down there. So they've been using the bow on the property on the deer farm, and there's houses right beside it. So, and many of the deer have not been killed, so they're running around the neighborhood down my road as well, that I've seen one. So I would just like to say that I am totally against the use of bows or pellet guns, because they do more harm to animals than they do to kill them. And I don't like to see that suffering.
If I may, through the chair, just to direct that it's written in the bylaws so that they're not allowed to discharge a firearm or bow or crossbow within the stipulations, again, of 150 meters of houses, but also that they have to have permission of the property owner if they're going to use a bow, and also that they have to have practice tips if they're going to operate a bow within the district.
Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just in terms of the history of this document and when Director Hicks came before the council, the issue was about people protecting the crops, not just general ALR land. And so the exemption, as I see it in this bylaw, is found that was directed to that was the key to be able to use the gun to control the geese. Any person who is the holder of a valid crop protection permit or holder of a federal migratory game birding hunting permit issued by the Canadian Wildlife Service. So it's not just about anybody being able to go out. It is absolutely specific to holding this permit to be able to control the geese on your property. Have I got that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so it's not just general, anybody on ALR land can go out and shoot geese. You have to have, that's the exemption. You have to have that permit to do it, which is what Director Hicks was requesting we do, if I remember correctly.
Okay, question that I have is the bylaw states out the penalty, so if there's contravention to this, so someone is just randomly targeting deer, for example, and not killing the deer, but the animal is suffering, that there would be a penalty. If this bylaw were not in place, is there a penalty?
Yes, it's under the jurisdiction of the federal and provincial government to not do that, not the municipalities. Municipalities are allowed to set bylaws to basically offer clarification.
But in this case, we too will also have a penalty in addition to.
No, it's strictly.
It's strictly to the, okay. Yep. All right, thank you. Another question?
Well, again, it gets into this complicated thing. You know, we're going to be, you know, and I remember when Mr. Hicks made this presentation some time ago, and I'm going to say it's probably over a year ago. One of the things that's concerned is the sports fields. So the geese become a problem on the sports field. Then kids fall down, they cut themselves. There's infections, and there's all these things that we're trying to accomplish something with our bylaw about controlling a pest. Yet we're putting some more barriers in place to making that happen. And you know, I mean, no one wants to see anything inhumane happen to any animal. But at some point, when the geese start overrunning the fields and all the things, people are going to start screaming. So it's kind of complicated for me, is that we have the provincial regulation and the federal regulation. Federal regulation, if I'm correct, covers migratory birds, right? Which geese are slowly not becoming. And then the provincial regulations covers all other animals, right? And the protection of those animals within those regulations. So really all we're talking about here is a bylaw about the discharge of a weapon within the district, right? So it just seems like it's morphed from this letter from Mr. Hicks saying we can't control them unless we have a bylaw in place. Or our current bylaw was that there was no discharge of firearms, right?
Correct. Our current bylaw doesn't have any exceptions.
Right. So then now we're adding bow and crossbow to that regulation.
That's correct, because that was a concern of the residents.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Pearson. I think what staff are trying to do is find a balance between the interests of farmers to protect their crops, which is critical for our food supplies, and the rights of the rest of the residents. So, I mean, you can control the geese through a number of different means. I've seen the city of Vancouver and Richmond get dogs out there on the runways, you know, at the airports, you know. So the bylaw itself is meant to protect farmers and their crops from the migratory birds and the interests of the rest of the residents of Sault. So this is providing, I think, exceptions to our current bylaw, which allows those farmers to protect their crops, which we heard from Director Hicks and from the farmers themselves that that's really important for their livelihood.
Yeah, and I appreciate the work that's going into this. It just seems like we're getting more complicated. But my concern is that public space is also lumped into this. This is not just about agricultural land. Like, I mean, the farmers are going to do what they need to do to protect their food supply or their crops or their livelihood. I'm fully supportive of that. But I'm also supportive of controlling them in spaces, because if the farmers are shooting them down at, you know, between Grant Road and West Coast Road, they're going to go land at the ballpark. And then they're going to go from the ballpark if the dogs chase them, and then they're going to go down to the soccer field behind Mills Landing store, and then they're going to go over to the high school. So it's just going to be this sort of chasing them, and then they're going to go wherever they're not being shot at. Yeah, hopefully they'll head to... Yeah. So, and I know we get into these debates at this table. It seems like we start here, but we morph over to here, and then we get lost in the intent. So if tonight's bylaw is about the discharge of firearms and bows within the District of Sault, I'm fully supportive of that. I don't think we've got any solution towards the pests, or whatever we call them, that are out there, because some people will say that they're beautiful and other people will say they're pests. So, okay, I'm fine now.
Councillor Loggins?
I highly doubt that the school district would allow guns on their property to take care of the geese. So I'd like to move first reading.
Seconder? Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ray. Discussion on first reading. This was a topic of discussion at the CRD, and that's where Mike Hicks is speaking as a regional director, but also as a board director, where all the municipalities do this. So that is the case where, yeah, you need to apply different methods depending on where you're located, because the ball field behind Mills Landing is too close to schools and residents, right? So you'd have a different method potentially. And then if all the municipalities do something, then maybe the birds will find fly up north, or I don't know what they'll do. But it's the case where all municipalities are taking a similar strategy. Any other discussion on first reading? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson is opposed. Move second reading, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson is opposed. And third reading by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any final discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson is opposed. Okay, thank you. Okay, RA1, development permit and development variance permit for 6557 Clairview Road. And we have a report from our planning staff. Welcome, Ms. Johnston.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. The owner of this property has applied for a development permit to construct a 4-unit townhouse. The property is zoned RM1, low-density multifamily, and has been evaluated against the OCP's Development Permit Area Number 3, which looks at the form and character for multifamily residential buildings. The applicant has also applied for various setback variances. This is the proposed building and parking layout. The proposed accessory building will be adjacent to Clairview Road. The proposed 4-unit townhouse will be in the middle of the site, and there is a no-build area located 15 meters from the high water mark. When analyzing the site, staff reviewed the building and the layout in accordance with the zoning bylaw and can confirm that the use, the height, and the lot coverage requirements have been satisfied. 6 parking spaces are required, and this has been achieved. The applicant can provide an extra 7th parking space, but a setback variance from 1.5 meters to 0.5 meters is required from the side property line. The subject property has building site limitations due to the topography and setback requirements. Reducing both side yard setbacks for the residential building from 3 meters to 2 meters, and allowing the 2 unenclosed stairwells to be located 0.2 meters from both side property lines will help accommodate the structural design plans and satisfy the required parking. To help screen parking from Clairview Road, the applicant is requesting that the front lot line setback for the proposed accessory building be reduced from 7.5 meters to 3 meters, as this would allow for the creation of an inner courtyard between the residential building and the accessory building. 4 parking spaces will be located in the inner courtyard, and the remaining 3 parking spaces will be concealed in the accessory building. The maximum height in the RM1 zone is 3 stories up to a height of 12 meters. The proposed height of the 4-unit townhouse is 11.2 meters and will have 2 stories facing Clairview Road and 3 stories facing the Souk Basin. The proposed accessory building will be 8 meters and will have 1 story facing Clairview Road and 2 stories facing Souk Basin. The second floor of the accessory building will have an amenity space for the residents. The applicant has proposed a mix of materials, including a black roof, iron gray hardy plank siding, combined with chestnut brown hardy plank and charcoal stone. Staff have included a condition that landscaping or solid decorative fencing be provided along the western boundary to buffer the adjacent residential use. Overall, staff have no concerns with the proposed variances and are satisfied that the form and character requirements in the OCP have been achieved with this application. Planning has also received no letters of objection from adjacent landowners. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnston. Questions? Councillor Pearson, then Ray.
I move the recommended action.
Okay, you're recommending it in its entirety?
Absolutely.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Question to our corporate officer. There's sort of a breakdown of 2 sections, so can this all be moved as a block, or do we need to do A to D first and then item 1?
No, that's fine, Your Worship. You can move it all as one block.
Okay. So, going back, Councillor Ray had questions.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. A quick question. In terms of the east side of the property, I think it was a request that it be reduced to 0.2. That goes along I don't know what the official name for it, sort of like a breezeway that would allow people to walk up and down. Is there anything that's planned to be between the property and that breezeway, that walkway, to ensure that people can use that area? The likelihood of anybody being able, I've been down there and I've walked down there, and it's pretty treacherous at the bottom, but it is one of the few points along the harbor that allows people to sort of at least walk down and look at the water. So I just want to make sure that there isn't anything that impedes people's ability to walk down that right away. I apologize, I don't know what the technical name of it is.
Through the chair, with this application, the applicant will not be impeding that right of way at all. All the development will be on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Ray.
Yes, sorry. I guess it's just one of those things on the record that I don't want them. What we've noticed is people along the water have sort of incorporated right-of-ways that belong to the district to sort of be part of their property, and then other people can't have that opportunity to get either to the water or to other places. So I just want to be on the record saying that in the future, I don't want this right-of-way to sort of get incorporated into somebody's side yard or something. I think we need those opportunities to let people at least walk down to the water.
No, absolutely. You're correct, Councillor Ray, and staff will work to ensure that that right-of-way is maintained, because that is for all the public to use. So thank you for bringing that forward. See no other questions, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item is RA2, and it's an appointment of our fire chief. And so the recommendation's been moved by Councillor Ray. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any questions or comments?
Comment.
Go ahead, Councillor Ray.
Yes, thank you. And just like to thank staff, our CAO. I'm excited about a new fire chief arriving so soon, and look forward to working with them. Thank you.
Excellent. And then we'll welcome our fire chief on January 1st. Is that correct?
Your Worship, Chief Mount will be in town next week just for a couple of days to meet the career staff as well as the volunteers, some of whom he's met already, which is why we're actually changing the date to December 19th, because under workers' compensation, if he's going to be on site, we want to make sure that he's covered. But then he'll be back home with his family for Christmas and then taking over full-time duties in January.
Okay, I understand. Thank you for that clarity. Great. So, yes, we'd like to welcome the new chief, and thanks to staff for the process. I understand that both career and volunteer firefighters had the opportunity to meet and discuss potential hires. So, obviously, they're worked very strongly together as a team. So, I appreciate the effort that made to reach out to them.
It was certainly a very rigorous process, Your Worship, and even the candidate, all three candidates, the finalists, commented that they were very happy with the process. So we're very confident that we have a very good candidate going forward.
Great. Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Our next item is RA3, MIABC Associate Member Coverage, Morwena Holdings Limited.
Move recommendation.
Seconded. Okay, that's been moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Are there any questions? Councillor Loggins.
Just a question for clarity. It goes to January 31st. Is this just due to that transition period? Is he going to be around and meeting with the chief? And thank you.
Our Director of Finance, our CEO.
Through your worship to Councillor Loggins, you're absolutely right. There's going to be a transition period, and we're also in negotiations with the IAFF, and the interim chief is integral to those negotiations. So it's our hopes that the negotiations will be concluded by then, but I don't have a crystal ball, so we're keeping our fingers crossed.
Thank you. Anything from Councillor Ray? Anything to add, our Director of Finance?
Yes, to the member through the chair, just to add a bit to the CAO's comments. Also, Council had approved the extension of the agreement, so this is just to coincide with the extension of that agreement.
All right, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, item number RA4, MIABC Associate Member Coverage for the Soo Region Community Health Network. We have a report with a recommendation.
Move recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any questions about the report? Councillor Ray?
So just for clarification, I think I understand this. They're just attaching on to the overall district policy that we have. We're just adding them to be covered. Okay, thank you.
Yes, to the member through the chair. That MIA offers this associate member program, and yes, they are part of our policy, and we do pay a very small additional premium for that. So they review the agreements and let us know if they're in agreement with it, but they first want council approval that council is endorsing it as well.
Okay. Thank you. Next item, if you have the oh, pardon me. All those in favor? Did we move and second it? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Earlier, I referenced a report that we were adding being page 147. So this is where it sort of comes out in the paper agenda, but we still are on item RA5, and this is RA8. So if you're looking, if you see that, I am going in sequence. It just sort of came at this point. Okay, Animal Control Services Agreement. Is our corporate officer reporting out on this?
Yes, I don't have a lot to tell you, just that our current contract with CRD for our animal control ends at the end of December, and we didn't have time before this meeting to actually do a full review of that contract, but it's something we want to do in the new year, so we have an agreement with the CRD just to continue for another 3 months, and that will give us the time to analyze that contract for value for money going forward.
Okay, so the recommendation is moved as stated by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Loggins. Questions? Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, through the chair to our corporate officer. So we're going to do a review of this contract. I mean, we've talked about it for the last 2 years. So it's creeping up, I see, in value. It's now at $79,000. Is that what it is for the entire year?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so and I guess that's the support they provide us in the form of a animal control officer. That's all it is, right?
That's correct.
So, so I look forward to a report within the next 3 months before we renew this again. So, because we're getting to that point where we might be better off to have our own bylaw enforcement officer in the district 100% of the time, as opposed to sharing with other people at this price.
Well, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Pearson, it's certainly something I was thinking when I looked at this. I was quite astounded at the value of this contract, and I'd like to be able to dig into it a little bit more for value.
Yes, well, and through the chair to use is that at $80K.
Exactly.
And I'm not sure what the ratio of the time is that's being spent in our district, so I'm not sure.
Well, that's something that we can dig into once we have a chance.
I would look forward to that report. Thank you.
My understanding in the past as well, when this was discussed or renewed over previous occasions, was that some of what we may cover as any court time in the event that there is an issue with a dangerous dog or a dangerous animal of sorts, and that there would be some form of expertise all included in the contract. So if as you look into that, if you could please examine that as well. That's sort of what I remember from previous conversations was the court time.
Certainly, Worship, we'll look at all elements as far as economies of scale and how we can, make the maximum benefit and value for money.
Okay, thank you. And so this has been moved and seconded. Did you have something further, Councillor Pearson?
I'll wait till this is moved and seconded, so I'll have to comment.
It has been moved and seconded. Yes. So you have a question.
No, I don't have a question. I want to make something after this.
I see.
I was going to see if staff needs a motion to bring a report back to us about the value for this. I know we've talked about it, but actually.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Your Worship, I don't need a motion to do that because it was already, as soon as I saw this contract, my first thought was we need to review this. So,
And that's what's triggering the report. That's why we're doing this extension, is because staff would like the time to actually examine and bring a report back.
Yeah, I just, 3 months goes by quickly, so I just want to make sure that we...
I can assure you it's the top of our list in January.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. You're satisfied with that, Councillor Pearson? Okay. Number RA6 is the regular council meeting schedule. So this will be for the 2017 calendar year. It's our typical 2 days, 2 Monday nights a month, except for when there's the holidays. Then it bumps to the Tuesday night. We have just one meeting in July, nothing in August, one in September, and that's because of UBCM, and then the regular applies, only one meeting in December, but this does also allow us to call special meetings as necessary should we need to move some business. So we'll move the recommendation, moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any further discussion on the schedule? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. RA7 is the acting mayor appointments. This is for 2017. It's annual appointments. Our staff had just queried councillors to see if this schedule works or if there's any changes that you need to be made. So if there is anything for anyone at this point, or this is fine. Moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Ray, did you have a question? No. You're seconding? Okay. And Councillor Pearson, you're still on the deck for your busy time with Canada Post, but thank you for that. Okay. Maybe not next year. Oh, maybe. Okay. So I'll call the question then. All those in favor, opposed, motion's carried. And for the public interest, councillors step in and assume full duties as acting mayor when I'm absent, and that has been done in the past, so I thank everyone again for stepping in. Okay, now we go to RA8, and this was the police-based victim services. And we have just the report. Anything moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any questions on the report? Councillor Pearson.
To the member through the chair, in our budget we have a protective services area, and within that we have policing costs, and then the emergency services program, and then the fire department. So this would, right now, this amount of money is in the grants budget, and each year they would have to come forward and apply. And as you heard from the staff sergeant, that it's an integral part to their services. So instead of them having to come forward and apply, this just would move it out of the grant budget and into the policing services as a line, and then it can be discussed during the budget process.
Thank you. Thank you for that report through the chair. I just want to make sure that it doesn't get lost in, because we're moving towards having another police officer in that part of our budget. I just don't want this to sort of get swallowed up in that. Okay.
To the member through the chair. Yes, in the policing reserve report that was just heard a bit earlier, that one's addressing the costs of having the additional officers, and that, as you can see, the population of Sooke is increasing, and once we hit 15,000, we're paying 90% of the cost. Right now, we're paying 70%. So it is important to build that reserve. This particular item that we're discussing right now will be within the overall policing budget area, and you'll see it as a line, as you would, the cost. Well, the cost for the reserves are in a different budget area, but when I'm discussing that whole policing, I'll discuss all the costs.
And which raised the other issue is we had a discussion as we get near that 15,000, that we were looking for census-based reporting, so that it's really 15,000, because that's sort of the thing that we're afraid of right now. So okay, thank you.
And if I may, this report is to respond to the staff sergeant's comments that were made at the previous section about the funding model for this.
That's correct. And I've had a number of discussions with the staff sergeant, and this is, I think, the most efficient way to handle it. So.
Okay, very good. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Okay, next item is report section, RI1, interim values non-market change assessment roll for 2017. We do have a report here, and Mr. Blackhall, any comments on the report?
Thank you, Your Worship. So on page 167 is the report, and this is just information that's BC Assessment has come out with their preliminary assessment roll and now an interim roll, and they have been notifying people who are going to experience assessment increases significantly greater than the average, and I believe that's 15% above what the average increase would be. You can see from the report that the average we're looking at right now is, I believe, for, say, Class 1, for example, the change due to market value is 8.5%. And then there's non-market change as well, and which I've detailed in the report. Basically, when you put all this into the tax calculations, if we didn't do anything with the municipal budget, if it was the same as it was last year, and with the new non-market change values, that would equate to $163,000 of money, non-market change money. Last year, I believe, was 106 or in that neighborhood. So this is a change due to new properties or changes in zoning. It's not affecting the previous properties. So this is just a report for information on where it's at, and BC Assessment will have reported this information in a press release, and people who are affected by it in Souk, I believe the report mentions 35 or 38 or 35, sorry, properties that would be getting notices from the assessment authority. And it all depends on what we do with the municipal budget, the revenue requirement. If it was the same, then anyone who was at the average is where the trigger point is. That's what people need to be aware of, is where they are in relation to the average increase.
Questions on the report or questions for Mr. Blackall? None. Then a motion to receive, please. Moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any further discussion? Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. RI2, any council reporting out? Councillor Parkinson.
Both Councillor Loggins and I were out helping the fire department collect funds and food for the food bank on the weekend. And we also had the market at the museum, which was really too bad because it poured with rain both Friday and Saturday, but the tents were all set up, everybody was out there, and the people that were actually selling their goods said that it was okay, but it was pretty wet. So,
Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I attended the School District 62's growth strategy meeting in Langford on November the 29th. Interestingly, the district, the Souk School District, is the third fastest growing in the province, just behind Surrey and Langley. And they were saying lots of information, and I have a package that I will forward the emails to all of council, and my apologies because it fell off the radar. But the interesting thing is that the high school, the Belmont High School, is already too small for the growth that's occurring. Their plan is looking at what they'll do in terms of new builds for 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, 23, and we are looking at some new schools for Souk, but that's later in the 21, 22. Quite a rigorous process in terms of looking at how they're going to address the growing concerns of the growth of the school district. So I will forward that email. It's got the whole report there for everybody to take a look at.
If you can, Councillor Ray, send it to info@souk.ca, and then that way it can hit the public agenda as well, and on all of council will get it that way. Thank you. Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, I only have one thing to report. The Wanefuca Water Commission was canceled this month, so I don't get to report on that. My got to go in the Christmas parade in the center of Souk a couple of Sunday nights ago, and I want to say that at short notice, the service provider that we had in place stepped down, and it was taken over by our CAO and Mr. Lauren Christensen, and it was fantastically received across the district. And I want to extend a thanks to our CAO for meeting with the Lions and getting Mr. Christensen on board to have that happen. So I'd like to put a motion in place. I'm not sure if this is the right place to do it or not, to send a letter of thanks from our CEO or from the Mayor and Council to the Lions and the leaders from EMCS. Yeah. So all of the people that took part in that. So I'd like to send make a motion that we send out a letter of thanks to those people for a wonderful job. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Second, could a Christmas card work, or do you want a letter?
I think a nice Christmas card signed by the mayor or something, but really thanking Lauren and that team of volunteers from the thing, because it was the talk of the town for several days, and still people are very happy. So I want to thank our CAO for being so active in there and out there freezing to death too with everybody. So thank you.
No, that's great. I'll call the question on the motion. Do you have a question on the motion about? The motion about sending the thank you card. Okay. Okay. We have to vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Councillor Loggins.
All right. So I have a few things because I wasn't at the last meeting. I had a migraine. Sorry about that. Alrighty. So we had the parade, as was mentioned, which was fantastic. It was really good to see so many different businesses involved in that parade. And thank you to everyone who helped pull it off, of course. The other thing that I have been doing is the help fill a fire truck. So I've been going to Village and Shoppers out in the snow at one point, which was fun. And I also attended the SD62 Board of Education meeting on capital projects, which was very enlightening. And it looks like we're on the top of the list to have a few renovations done after Royal Bay is expanded, of course, because that's definitely a top priority. I also attended the All Councils Forum for Climate Change, which was the CRD initiative on the 19th of November, I believe it was. Yes. And it was very interesting. I still am working on a report to send to all of you on council here. A couple of things that came up specifically were that we must look at our, I guess all of our, I think we do have that in place, 15 meters, right? Above the, so we're pretty set with that. But one thing that we do also have to consider is that there is great potential for our communities to receive environmental refugees over the next 50 years. So that's something to consider as well. And environmental refugees that are from local BC areas. So I'll send that out to everyone. And the last thing is that it's one of the projects that I'm working on the side is with Haste BC at Journey and Poirier. And it was very interesting to note that on the surveys that came back there were about 30 different roads used on the way to school for those students. So that was brought to my attention, of course, and I know I always bring up sidewalks, but but this was something that came up so many times during my talks with these families, and 30 ways to school is a very unique challenge that we have for our area. So I believe through Councillor Ray, if you're still interested in participating in that, I think you were the contact for that. I can provide additional information as well, but I just thought I'd throw that out there today. Thanks.
Councillor Ray?
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on Councillor Pearson's acknowledgement of staff, but I really think I'd just like to emphasize in my appreciation for all of the staff that really worked hard to get the roundabout ready. understand staff were designing and helping build and out in the rain. And I just want to acknowledge that there was a lot of work by a lot of staff behind the scenes getting the roundabout ready for the parade as well. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ray, and members of council for your report. Just to highlight, at the CRD, the last election occurred for board chair. It's a one-year appointment, so Mayor Barb Desjardins was re-elected as board chair and Director Howe as vice chair. There was a shift with the hospital piece. Typically, the role of the vice chair takes on chair of the hospital board, but in this case, he focused in just on vice chair. Marian Alto was elected as chair for the hospital board, and then the CRD chair is the alternate to that role. There was a committee of the whole called to look at the committees and the structure of such, as well as potentially adding new committees, one specifically for housing and health. So that may or may not will get ratified on Wednesday, and then I've put in my submissions for committees, and then we'll find out what committees I'll be appointed to in the new year, so that does change every year. So waiting to see on that. As you all know, I was appointed to the Transit Commission. I had orientation last week, and my first meeting will be tomorrow morning, actually, with Transit. And I'm already getting a lot of feedback from our residents on routes and impacts and those sorts of things. So I look forward to sharing out more of that. In this case, all the meetings are typically open meetings, so there is no delay in terms of rising and reporting out because they're open meetings. But one item I did see on the agenda was the addition of sort of smart bus technology. Right now, if you know your transit stop ID, you can punch it in and find out when the next bus is, but it's pre-recorded information. It doesn't take cancellation or breakdown or detour or traffic into effect. So the new technology will actually be real time, and you'll actually know where your bus is, if it's late or if it's left. And in this case, we have heard sometimes of buses leaving Souk ahead of schedule and people left behind when that occurs. So this way there will be more tracking, and we know. And also if a Souk bus is pulled because it's servicing another route, you'll know that in real time. So that's coming up. Both myself, Councillor Parkinson, and our CAO attended a morning chamber breakfast, very early morning at 7, where I gave a presentation to the members of chamber. So thank you both for attending, and to the chamber for having me. I also swore in their new board. They have a new board with President Kerry Cavers returning to do a second year, but pretty much all new board members coming forward to the chamber. So looking forward to see their initiatives in the new year. And again, I'd like to thank all of our community for the Christmas light up, all the efforts that's been done for beautification, everyone for participating in the parades, and a special thanks to the two elves that were in the roundabout in the pouring rain getting that tree. I know it was our staff and one of our landscapers, and they brought in materials from home for the hot chocolate and everything. It was a real pull together, so it looks great out there. So many thanks. Okay, so moving along, we don't have any new business, so we're going to go through the correspondence section now. The first one is an email received from Guy Caron, Member of Parliament, request for support on Bill C-274, Transfer Small Business Family Farm and Fishing Operations. So he does have a draft, there is a draft letter, and they're just asking what we would like to do with that, if anything.
Move receipt.
Motion to receive by Councillor Reyes, or seconded by Councillor Pearson. Anything further? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Next is a proclamation request, and typically I do the proclamations and then you receive a copy of them, so they don't actually have to come to council. So it would be my intent to do this proclamation. It just ended up in this section and I sort of missed it.
Okay, move receipt.
Okay, so we'll move receipt, but I will be doing the proclamation. Seconder for Councillor Loggins. And when the proclamation is done, that will return to the council reader file. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Next, we have an email from Tourism Vancouver Island, and it's regarding a bid possibility for hosting the 2018 Tourism Conference. So this is in here. I'm wondering if council would like to see us examine the possibility of hosting. We have hosted this conference in the past. Is we can see what's involved. A question or comment from our corporate officer?
Thank you, Your Worship. If Council does want us to pursue this, I would suggest that we bring a report back related
Yes.
to staffing implications or time that, because the costs that are listed in here are not staff time. And that's an important consideration as far as your strategic priorities in the next 2 years.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for that. Councillor Pearson?
I would make a motion that we direct staff to explore the possibility of hosting this. I think it's good for our community to have as many conferences as we can get here.
Okay, is there seconded by Councillor Ray? So staff did have something drafted. Is that in agreement with what you've said, Councillor Pearson?
Yes, it is.
Okay, questions on the motion? Yes, Councillor Ray seconded it. Councillor Loggins?
I'm not sure that, I mean, we've hosted it in the past, and one of our strategic priorities is also to bring events like this to our community. So I see it as a priority. I especially support tourism in our region as well. So I think that it's, I think a report on the implications might be, yeah, I'm not sure if, like, the submission deadline's January 27th. So having a report on the implications without putting staff time in advance for getting the application started is a bit of a concern to me, I guess.
Clarity from our corporate officer?
The submissions are actually due until March. Councillor Loggins, to your question, I just want to make sure that if Council's going to make a decision to expend money and staff time, that you have all the information in front of you.
Councillor Ray?
I'm just wondering if the word implications in the motion is what's a little unsettling. If, just a report on
hosting
or bidding, a report reflecting what, cost. Yeah. Just I think implications, I think that's the sticky word. So.
Okay. Is the mover and seconder agreeable? We've just deleted that section. It's just a report on bidding for hosting.
I was fine with it.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Loggins?
I just wanted to clarify for, I guess, those listening that, yes, January 27th was the letter of intent, so it's not too much staff time put into that, as our staff did clarify for me. So just wanted to make that clear to everyone.
Great. Okay, we're good. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. 1C4, 197. We have an email from Mr. Bill Wilson regarding sewer placement for 6625 Souk Road. Councillor Ray.
I'm just wondering, one piece of paper, it sounds like there's a fair amount of history that may be behind this, and the request is moving a sewer line. So it's a little out of context. I mean, I can make it up in my mind. I think I know what he's getting at, but I'm just wondering if we should get a staff report on this before we do anything.
I think that would be the best way. If
I'll move a staff report be completed.
Okay, that's been moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any further discussion? All those in favor, opposed, motion's carried. Okay, C5 is the Horn Road parking. We've received the emailed correspondence. Thank you for sending that in advance, and as well as various submissions received today. So, Council, at this point, it's a matter of what would you like to do with this? The street prior to co-housing allowed for parking, and then the no parking signs were put up in front of as I understand it, in front of the entire co-housing project, which was a challenge for residents of the Harborside to get access into the building. So then the signs were moved so that the egress to the Kennedy's property would not be adversely impacted. So that's why there's no parking. The sign shifted alongside the frontage so that there'd be no parking in a certain area so that egress could be made, and then parking would be allowed here. I thought that was a reasonable compromise, but we do still hear from the Kennedy family that their egress remains impacted, and they would like to see it go back to no parking. So it's at a point now where both myself and staff would like to receive direction. I think it's just given the the emails and the discussions and the conversations that council will need to make a decision now in terms of resolving this matter. I sort of looked at the end of the Horn Road is where our public parking is to the to our Rotary Pier and to the boardwalk, which can be very busy. We heard this when we dealt with the expansion of a business located on Goodmere and how it's just tight for parking in that entire area at certain times, certain days, certain events. So this is where it's at. We can do a number of things. We can put no parking along the whole way back to how it was done in January. We can have no parking signs there at all and have the whole street available for parking. We can leave it as it is now with no parking in certain areas. And then there's also some ideas put forward by Captain Hull, who spoke earlier about installing a culvert on the north side. The no parking sign should be moved to the north side of Horn Road, not the south. And like I said, in removing the no parking signs entirely. So, what would council like to do with this? Councillor Loggins.
From what we've heard and what I've seen and from the photos and being down there, it seems like staff and the residents have done a lot to accommodate this and make it as easy as possible for everyone. I don't want to put an entire community of people out for 40 feet of parking, so I think that it's good to have that no parking zone there. As it is, that's how it is right now, right? Yeah, and that's all that people are asking for, so I don't see a problem with that. I do like the recommendation brought forward by Mr. Hull, because that's something that does need to be addressed in that area anyway. However, it's not a short-term solution. I don't know if that's something we have the capability of achieving right away. But for now, I think it's appropriate to leave the parking as is.
Okay, in terms of, I did speak briefly with engineering about the culvert, and as we know, there are significant water issues in this area. So it's the case as we examine the area in its entirety, then we can look at addressing or filling in ditches here and there. But the concern is that if you fill one in one, it'll pop up somewhere else, and the water just will continually find a way. I think we need to understand what's happening in the area as a whole. So I think it's on staff's radar as a longer-term fix, and it's something that we have to consider over time. Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Your Worship, is there enough, where the no parking signs is there enough room for the people to get out of their property and onto the road safely?
What we are hearing from the Kennedy family is that there is not. That's what they spoke to earlier.
No, I was just wondering from staff.
Okay.
Like engineering for the distance for coming out of a property safely.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Parkinson, in my opinion, there is enough room where the no parking signs are right now. It leaves ample room for exiting and entering that access.
And my second question would be, is there enough room for, I drove down there and the cars were parked on the side. Is there enough room for the fire trucks to go down?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Ray, then Pearson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I too went down, and I agree with Councillor Loggins. I think there's sufficient room. I think it's been a great compromise. I drive a very large truck with very big wheels, and there would be absolutely no way if I were going to visit anybody in that location to visit if my parent was in there to park anywhere on that street other than the park where they put in the sidewalk. I think one of the challenges on that street is that the first part from Murray Road until that sidewalk starts, the street and the sidewalk, there's a bit of a disconnect. So you can't really park very well along that first piece of it. The other thing is I got out there with the tape measure, and there is no difference between the edge of that road and the car than there is marginally with anybody parked on Steeplechase that has two cars parked on either side of the road. There's only a couple of inches difference. So I feel for the Kennedy family, but I think what's been negotiated and what's there, I mean, my truck wouldn't get in that driveway, so I can't compare. I don't have a compact vehicle. But I agree with Councillor Logans. I think the compromise is fair, and I wouldn't support any changes.
Councillor Pearson?
Mine's more of one of a general comment, and again, it comes back as we develop these properties in our long-term strategic plan of pushing that development down towards the waters. We have to be cognizant of parking and access and egress, because as communities start changing, and that's development, and it's been in our long-term plan, is that we have to be very, very cognizant. We saw a fourplex, or now it's 4 townhouses. That parking was the same concern further along the harbor. So we're going to find that pressure, and then what I do appreciate is that the Harborside co-housing was a development that was endorsed by this council, and it's been by their nature they've been very, very congenial and trying to work it out with not only the neighbors, in this particular case, and I feel for somebody who's that age, but I haven't known anything different from the Harborside co-housing people. They've been really very pleasant to deal with from everything that I've dealt with them, and I went up and down that road several times to see if I could find where the challenges were for me personally. I didn't find it to be that difficult for me personally to traverse that road. I think the compromise is a compromise, and when I hear the word compromise, then I'm reasonably satisfied that we're trying. And I know that you're, and
Sir,
sorry, I'm not. And I didn't mean to look at you when I said that. Sorry, but again, I hear the word compromise, and I'm happy when I hear that. But again, and I respect that there's challenges as we change neighborhoods, and the Harborside co-housing. I have to say that I spoke in favor of it from its concept, knowing that there would be challenges with parking, and knowing that there would be challenges with our community changing. So difficult for us. So anyways, thank you.
Okay. Council, I'm looking to you for a resolution so that there's something on record. Councillor Loggins? Or do we have, perhaps as we've been going along, is there anything? Oh, okay. Move receipt of the correspondence. Is there a seconder? Moving receipt would mean that the status, what is now, would prevail. Okay, so that's been moved receipt by Councillor Loggins and seconded by Councillor Ray. So everyone is clear that we are just receiving the information and the signs would remain as they are, the situation remains as is. Councillor Ray?
Yes, through your worship to the CAO, I'm just wondering if it would be more conducive to having a resolution from council on that parking area, or would you like this to remain in the purview of the staff?
I defer to the corporate officer, but my preference would be to have a resolution from mayor and council.
Okay.
For the record.
Our corporate officer concurs.
Your worship, if you certainly want to make a motion to that effect, it's not a problem.
Okay. Well, I'll call the question on receiving the information because we should do that anyway, and then we can put something else together. So all those in favor of receipt? Opposed? This motion's carried. And then the next resolution, I'm wondering if staff is wordsmithing. Okay, thank you. I appreciate the parliamentarian support. So the motion stated that staff be directed to leave the current parking signs along Horn Road. An amendment, Councillor Ray?
Yes, that staff be directed to leave the current parking signs at the current locations. Because you can have parking signs and you can move them around, but I think they should stay at the current location, which gives the ability for the egress from the Mrs. Kennedy's property.
Okay. Would you like to move that, Councillor Ray? Moved and seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Our last item is I-1. We have a grouping of correspondence for information. They're all outlined here from November 25th to December 6th, and we'll pull, Councillor Ray would like to pull an item.
Yes, Your Worship. I don't have the list right handy. Oh, it must be at the front. No, I don't have it. My apologies. But I'd like to pull the CRD, the 2016 Regional Growth Strategy letter that was provided.
Yep. So what we have here, what Councillor Ray is referring to is we received a news release that I forwarded it out, and it's regarding the Regional Growth Strategy bylaw for municipal acceptance. And so the board has made a resolution to send this out. So I did receive a more formal letter, and there is a 2-month period now where every municipality can review and give comment back. With the Regional Growth Society strategy, it has to be unanimous amongst all participating municipalities. And so that's where, with the changes, it's our opportunity to review the item and to give our feedback into that. Questions?
Yes, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, will there be any type of report coming from staff that have reviewed it that sort of highlights or identifies areas in the regional growth strategy that we should be concerned about?
To our Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Ray, staff are reviewing the RGS now. We received it a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago. We're just starting the review now. We'll have a report coming for you.
Okay, Councillor Pearson.
Through the staff to our Director of our Planning or Engineering. What's the drop dead date for it? Because the 60 days, did the clock start ticking when you received it, or do they have a date that it's going to be rubber stamped at the board?
Your Worship, it did come with a, through to Councillor Pearson, it did come with a date, and I suspect that if we get it to Mayor and Council by the second meeting in January, we'll be fine.
Okay.
I can't remember the specific date, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess then with the staff report, will you highlight some of the changes, because there were some amendments made to the original one? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Again, through to Councillor Pearson, we will highlight any change, and we will make recommendations from a staff perspective for your review and decision.
Okay.
So some items, when the preliminary one came before, it was in the previous term. I remember the working group at the time that we had assigned was to have Souk as it was like a town center. They had us listed differently in terms of the classifications.
Nodule or something.
Yeah, a rural town center or some sort of node or something that we responded to. The node, I remember, but I don't remember the exact language. The other piece was about extension of water services to areas within our boundary, and that's it's a very highly debated topic at the board, and that's what's leading to a bit of a split. I don't even know if I think this round is already starting to be rejected by some municipalities.
Well,
go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
So, sitting on the other Wanda-Fuca Water Commission, it should be duly noted that this council and past councils have said that extending water to our boundaries has to be included in the regional growth strategy. And I know they don't like that wording, but that was the mandate of this council and the previous council, is that we want that it's in our strategic plan to extend water to all boundaries.
Again, through to Councillor Pearson, we are more than aware of that position. And when we received the draft last time, we went back to the CRD under your signature, Your Worship, with regards to the language that they were using about not considering us a growth area. It was quite a strong letter, so I think they got the message, because the recent draft that we got doesn't really pinpoint that we're not but we're going to be very cautious how we bring it forward with our recommendations.
So, through the chair to you and to the other councillors, is that we have to be very cognizant of the fact that extension to waterline is seen as growth outside the regional growth strategy. So that's a wording that they keep bringing up. And I recently, as I sit on that Juan de Fuca Water Commission, we're talking about extending down Grant Road as an example. It's contrary to our OCP. And yet our council has said that we want to extend it to all boundaries. So that little stretch that goes along there is contrary to our OCP by the people who review it. So we have to be very careful. So there's lots of people out there looking at our OCP and finding what they want it to say. So I just want to go on public record that we're trying to extend our water lines to all boundaries. Thank you.
To our CAO, and then Councillor Ray.
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Pearson. It's a good thing we're reviewing our OCP right now.
Councillor Ray.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And just to follow up on our Director of Development Services comments and Councillor Pearson's, the presentation that I spoke earlier about the School District 62 is actually the very last document, or second to last document, so it is already here. But what was interesting at the school district is that municipalities such as Saanich and Victoria and Oak Bay are actually decreasing in the schools. And so as much as other areas might think that we're not the growth area, the statistics in terms of the demand on our school system, I think, should prove otherwise to those who might want to argue that we're not a growth area.
The comments that come from the board is that there were two possibilities, and part of this also is water extension in the Juan de Fuca as well. And there are areas in the Anderson Cove area that recently had water extension from a health and safety perspective. The residents there don't want to see any density or growth, but it's the need to access water as opposed to having it trucked in. So there were two possibilities, but this draft of the RGS is the one that actually made it out, but it was a very tight vote. The concerns expressed at the board table are that where there's water, there's growth, and they don't want to see any more, they call it rural sprawl, out west. So I find that to be sort of a derogatory comment that I don't really want to hear anymore, because if you want to look at the region, a number of people are choosing to live out here for the lifestyle and for the affordability. So if all municipalities addressed affordability in their own community, perhaps people wouldn't come out this way. But that's not the case. So there's an argument back. We also do hear from residents that are running short on wells. And when you look at climate change and how things are changing, that's only going to increase. We hear from our fire department, we've received reports of the concern of fire in hot and dry, and we have volunteers that are out there that need access to piped water. So there are ways of us controlling our own growth through zoning and through our OCP. Those are the two very important tools. And of course, right now, sewer is another one that can or cannot be. It depends on the argument there. But those are the two that allow us to look at things. So that's where we'll look forward to the staff report. I'm grateful that you're looking into that and with a keen eye in terms of how it plays into all the other plans, and look forward to that report, because I'm just looking at the more governance aspect and not seeing how it's working with our other documents. Director of Finance had a question or a comment?
Yes, Your Worship, just a comment. The CMHC housing start stats are interesting to look at, and for January to October, Souk is the third, has the third highest number of starts for single-family residences, and that's up about 40% from last year, the same time period, which is January to October. So it's significant.
Third highest in
all the region, I believe it's the CRD. South Island. Sorry.
For South Island.
Well, sorry, that includes Victoria City, Oak Bay, Esquimalt, Saanich, Central Saanich, North Saanich, Sydney, View Royal.
So within the
Highlands,
the
Langford,
CRD.
Colwood, Machosen.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yep. Only Saanich and Langford had more. So.
Okay. Great. Okay, so we'll look forward to that report. So then,
Move receipt.
the rest, that would be move receipt of all email, or all correspondence by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any further discussion on any of these items? The only piece I'll add, there was a comment about the Trans Mountain project. As you know, the federal government did endorse or give the green light to that, and we're waiting for the provincial response now. I do have a meeting with the West Coast Marine spill response because if this goes ahead, I want to know what the plan is. So that meeting is coming up. Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thank you. And I wanted to ask the chair, because I know that you have your Transit Commission meeting. Is it tomorrow, you said?
Yes.
With the start of the Mackenzie interchange, and we've received some, is there an appetite with BC Transit for discounted transit fares during the time of construction to alleviate the congestion on the highways? Like I know that you're going to be sitting there for your first meeting, and it's just something that we should be considering, because if congestion is going to start happening at Mackenzie, which you can already see
it already is.
Yeah, the blasting is starting. So if the transit was to be proactive and you're dealing with the province at this level, that would be something that I would think that would be acceptable for the Western communities, is to encourage people to ride transit, and maybe in the form of a discount for everybody. That way, more people could get on there. So, anyways, just a thought that you might be able to bring that up tomorrow. So, I just saw that the letter was in here dealing with transit. So,
great. No, thank you for the suggestion. Excellent. Okay, I'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And a motion to adjourn the regular open session and to go in camera. Okay, that's been moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Loggins. And that is subject to Section 91I and L. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We'll just take a short recess.